into today's topic. I just want to give more time for people to get into the chat. It's an interesting topic. This is going to be a topic that y'all going to enjoy. Today's topic, I just want to give. All right, family. Now that we have hit the 1 minute and 30-second mark, I'm going to get into today's topic. So, today's topic is the AfCFTA and how African Americans can benefit. For those who may not be aware, the AfCFTA stands for the African Continental Free Trade Area. So, what this is basically a Pan African economic agreements. So all 54 countries, as it's supposed to do, are going to have one common market. And so it's going to allow for people to move freely across borders. It's going to allow for goods to be set up in African countries, distribution chains, supply chains. That is what the AfCFTA is. And that is the first question. It is what is the AfCFTA? And once again, it's the African Continental Free Trade Area. So as it stands, as of 2021, we have 36 countries that have ratified that have deposited their instruments of ratification with the depository, which is the chair of African Union Commission. 54 countries is the number of signatories that have signed the consolidated text of the agreement establishing the AfCFTA, and the only country that has yet to sign it is Eritrea, and you have 38 countries that have compiled with their domestic requirements for ratification of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, and there's two countries that are currently pending. So the first country that signed it or gave their ratification date was Ghana back in um, it was in 2018, and the most recent country to do it was Zambia, and they did that on February the 5th. So why is this important for African Americans? Is Africa has an estimated GDP of $3.4 trillion. The countries that are the largest economies in Africa right now are Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, Kenya, Ethiopia, Angola. Those are some of the major countries in terms of GDP that we can benefit. In terms of population, it is huge. Africa has 1.2 billion people. So this is going to be influential in the future because it is estimated that between really about half of all the growth is going to occur in Africa from here to 2050. So this African Free Trade Agreement is especially important. I don't know if y'all know this or if there's something to consider. Intra-African trade only counts for 14 to 18% of all African countries' trade. If you're an African, you are more likely to be trading outside of Africa than within Africa. And that is a huge problem because about 70% of all European trade happens within Europe. About 52% of all trade in Asia happens within Asia, and about somewhere between 30 to 40%, depending on what sources you get, happens within the Americas. So they're looking to at least double the amount of intra-African trade with the AfCFTA agreement. Now, as I was portraying before, in terms of population, you have Nigeria being the largest country in the world, of course, counting for most of the population. Then you have, I think it's Ethiopia, that is the second largest, and then Egypt is the third largest in terms of population. You also have a really young population. Most Africans are under the age of 30, so would be a really great thing for them in the future. So that is what the AfCFTA is. Also, some things to consider. Tariffs are going to be going down, so there's going to be less barrier to sell their goods. Although it's going to be huge challenges because you don't have access to infrastructure. Like I said before, in the previous video, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to be going in depth with this, but if you have any particular questions that you would like to ask, let me know and I'll try to answer them and I'll mention them in the comments. So if you have any questions, let me know about that. So yeah, so in terms of population, Nigeria is number one. In terms of GDP too, Nigeria is number one. Actually, Egypt is number two. South Africa is number three. Then you have the East African Commission. So the East African Commission is a sub-region of the African Union. So similar, like you have ECOWAS, you have the Arab League, which primarily controls North Africa. You have the East African Commission, which controls primarily the countries of Ethiopia, not Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. Although the Democratic Republic of Congo has been trying to get into the EAC, although I think that's kind of difficult because the Democratic Republic of Congo drives on the right side of the road and they need to drive on the left side of the road. That's just a side note. Then after the East African Commission, you have Algeria, you have Morocco, you have Kenya, you have Ethiopia, Ghana, Tanzania, and Angola. And those countries round out your top 10. So Nigeria has about 466.88 billion. That's almost half a trillion. Egypt comes in at a distant second with 374.89 billion. And then you have South Africa with 317.19 billion. So the next question that we're going to get into is, how are Black businesses hurt in the United States? So Black businesses, everybody knows, historically Black businesses have had difficulties getting loans. Black businesses are more likely to not have the capital and resources. Black businesses are more likely to only have one employee. I think it was like previously before, like 98% of Black businesses have only one employee. Although they only employ although they employ approximately 920,000 people, so that is something to consider. Njama wema habari wewe hujambo baruti katembo. So Black-owned businesses in America comprise of 920,000 people, but once again, I've said before, it's fewer than 125,000 African American businesses have employees, and those employer firms that employ more than 920,000 have an annual payroll of 23.9 billion. And they said just 7% of Black-owned businesses have 6 to 10 employees compared to the national average of 12%. Like I said before, Black-owned businesses have received less business finances and they do it at higher rates. So when they get funding, they tend to be 30,000 less than compared with white-owned businesses, and they have an interest rate of 1.4% higher. Sijambu, Baruti Kitebo. So with a 1.4% interest rate, that's going to mean that we're going to have to pay more on a monthly basis. The average level of startup capital that Black entrepreneurs have is $35,205, and that is completely dwarfed by the fact that white entrepreneurs have about $106,720. So we're almost talking about triple the amount of capital that white-owned businesses have compared to Black-owned businesses. Another fact you should know is less than just 1% of Black-owned businesses have obtained business loans within their first year. And if you would like some more information, I'm going to put this in the chat so that people can know what I'm talking about. I'm not making this stuff up. So you can go further into this, you can look more detail into it. So please tell me that showed up in the chat. Let me know if it showed up in the chat. So yeah, so it's from the Fundera website. It's really long. It's a really long thing, but if you highlight that, it's going to lead you to the website. But though it basically gives you 20 statistics about Black-owned businesses that you should know about. So we already know based on there that we don't have a lot of assistance, we don't have a lot of access to capital, we don't employ that many employees, and so this creates a lot of dilemma with Black-owned businesses. How are we supposed to, people pushing entrepreneurship, but how are you going to push entrepreneurship if you don't understand how economics work? Um, Economics is really, really complex. It's not just simple. It's not something that you can just um do. You have to factor in market price. You have to factor in the competition. You got to factor in barriers to entry. And the reality of it is that we have a lot more barriers to entry in terms of Black businesses than compared to their white counterparts. So that is something that we have to consider, the fact that how are Black businesses being hurt in the United States. I understand that a lot of people have this mindset that, Black owned businesses is what we need. We need to build our communities, but they don't understand that it's a lot more nuanced and a lot more complex. It's not just we just build economic base and we just share within our own community. No, you got to have the environment. And I compare it similar to a hurricane. Now you're saying why a hurricane, but when you understand what makes a hurricane, it's gonna be a very similar analogy. So in order for a hurricane to develop, you need warm water, little to no wind shear, and little to no dry air. And of course, you got to be over water. And so, how does this relate to Black people? Well, if you are in an environment where there is a lot of barriers to entry, it is very competitive, you don't have access to resources, it's going to be really hard to make it to the top. That's why in America, although I'm not a huge fan of billionaires, you have about like 585, 620 billionaires, and out of them, you have about like 5 Black billionaires. So there's not a lot. Um, for sub-Sahara, what are the corporate taxes? Africa has about a 28% corporate tax. That's the continental average. It may vary with countries. Actually, Africa has the highest average statutory corporate tax amongst all regions. Like I said, it was 28%. It's actually 28.5%. Europe has the lowest average statutory corporate tax rate among all regions at 19.9%. South America has the highest, in terms of GDP, has the highest average statutory corporate tax rate at 31.83%. So let me put that up so that people can understand the question that I just answered when they can go back. And then, Baruti, to answer your question, you said, did you feel that Black businesses will benefit greatly by being involved in the economic loopholes created by the AfCFTA? If so, describe this picture and associated leverage boost for Blacks. Um, yes, I actually do believe that Black-owned businesses can actually benefit from those economic loopholes because Africa doesn't necessarily have the infrastructure. And a lot of African countries need that infrastructure. And in terms of our capital, $35,000 may be small in America, but that's huge in Africa. So what I can see is Black-owned businesses setting up shop in a particular country or a particular city, using those economic loopholes. Although I'm not a huge fan of breaking the law, but it's capitalism, and in a capitalist society, they're gonna find loopholes. So you're gonna use these loopholes to build up their economic brands, to build up their company, name, and build up their income. Once they built up their income, then we can start to expand and take a substantial share of the market. And that's going to, of course, be, met with a little bit of resistance from other powers, but I really don't, of course, we really don't care about that. So that's what I see Black people, especially Black owned businesses, greatly benefiting. You have Black construction companies, you have Black doctors, you have Black lawyers, you have Black bread and breakfast companies, you have Black bookstores, and you can meet those market demands, let's say in a country like Liberia, where they may not have access to a lot of libraries and a lot of bookstores. They have them there, but they may not have the investment capital needed or the little extra money that's needed. Or a country like Guinea, or a country like Guinea-Bissau, or a country like Burkina Faso. And so that's where Black owned businesses can benefit greatly from the AfCFTA. And like I said before, we're having a $3.4 trillion market that we're coming from. We're not coming from a like small market. We're talking about 1.2 billion expected to double by 2050. 3.4 trillion. Some estimates say by 2050. I know that maybe a few years back has it in 2050. Africa is going to be worth 29.4 trillion dollars by 2050. So this is a huge advantage that Black-owned businesses can benefit. And so that's why I believe that Black-owned companies should do a lot more than just, try so hard in America where we know that it's going to be an uphill battle. I shortened that length because that length was just way too long and I'm just not going to put that there. So I shortened the link. So the next question we have is, why should African Americans invest more in Africa? Like I said before, there's a huge marketplace. You have access to these natural resources. So an example would be you have access to the gold, the titanium, the cobalt, the coltan. In the case of Liberia, 44% of its geography is rainforest, which can be tourism. So you would have access to that. South Africa has a lot of diamonds. Zimbabwe has a lot of platinum. You have Niger, which have a lot of uranium. You have Sudan with a lot of gold. You have Ethiopia with coffee. Mauritania with iron ore. The Western Saharas with phosphate. You have Zambia with copper. You have Mozambique with aluminum. You have Burkina Faso with gold. Mali with cotton. And so what this will allow us to do is it's going to allow for these countries to specialize in a certain field. So if you're somebody like Guinea and Mozambique, so with countries like Mozambique and Guinea, you have aluminum. So you can create metal because aluminum is a prenuptial for steel, and so you can make steel. Well, steel is what you need for a lot of manufacturing, a lot of infrastructure. So that's where Mozambique can specialize in, let's say, steel and aluminum. So can Guinea. And then in return, a country like, South Africa, which has an industrial base, can make, you know, convert these products into finished goods. Because one of the biggest reasons why Africa is poor is not the natural resource aspect, but the aspect of we're not converting, resources into finished goods. We are one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest continent, but we're not converting those resources into finished goods. And that's where African Americans can come in, because converting these goods into finished goods requires a lot of resources. It requires a lot of money. So if a Black-owned businesses, have 30,000, we can say, hey, we need this money. We can come together and we can, make a manufacturing plant, or we can make, a cement factory, and we can invest in those. Yes, so they are trying to create a diaspora passport, Baruti. They are trying to create a diaspora passport. The African Union designated the diaspora as the sixth part of the African Union. So they are trying to create a diaspora passport. It's in the works. I'm not for sure when it'll be done or like how it's gonna go, but that is what they're trying to have in store. They also are trying to have a Pan African passport, and also other regions are having their own passports. So the ECOWAS passport is one of them that you guys are most familiar with. So that is where that is going to happen. Is ADOS mindset nativism hurting the effort in this direction? It is. It is because the problem is you have Black Americans investing in something that, for me personally, I deem is a lost cause. And the reason why I deem this a lost cause is because you already have low wealth. Okay. The Black population, in terms of as a percentage, is going to decline, and the Hispanic population, the Asian population, although we're not growing faster compared to these other groups. So you have Black Americans who are trying so hard to say that, well, we built America. Well, we built Liberia. Well, we built America. You built America against your will. And America only used you because you were economically benefiting, not because they really sincerely cared about you. That's one of the things that need to be debunked with this whole mindset of that is we did not come here by choice, and we came here to serve a specific goal. One of the things after slavery is once slavery was over, they wanted to get rid of us. Why? Because there was no purpose for you. You were only here for a specific purpose. And now that you're no longer needed, you know, they wanted to get rid of you. So we're spending so much time and energy in America when we could be investing in Africa, where most of the people look like us. And if we weren't investing in Liberia, we would have an economic base. Liberia would serve as the economic base. It would serve as our nation state. Liberia serves as our nation state, and it has a lot of resources like hydropower, access to, tantalum, access to iron ore. Liberia was one of the major iron ore places in the world. And so Liberia would then serve as our nation state. Then we can go to other African countries because our people would have ECOWAS and African passports, and we would have Liberian citizenship. So if you're an African American, not only are you able to freely pass, but because we have a nation state, we would be able to invest in other African countries and gain influence. And that goes into the fourth question that I have. How does nationhood play a factor in the success of the AfCFTA? It plays an important part because when Black Americans have an economic base, in particularly Liberia, as my avatar would say, it allows for us to set a precedent and an example for the African continent to follow. Because one of the problems or one of the concerns that people have with the CFCA is infrastructure. Who's going to fund these infrastructure projects? Who's going to have these roads being built, these highways being built, these railroads being built? Who's going to build these space stations? Who's going to build these satellites? If we come in with nationhood and we have our nation straight, we can invest in other African countries and buy influence and influence their economic policies. It would be, of course, within the confines of the AfCFTA, and it'll be in confined with ECOWAS and other regions, but we would be able to help develop their country. There is a powerful article that I'm going to try to shorten, but the article was about basically Africa needs its own Singapore or it needs its own Japan. It was written by Bloomberg Quint, but it was also, put on Yahoo Finance Yahoo. It was also put on, Business Standards. And they were basically coming to the conclusion that we need that country to spur industrialization. That's where we come into. We come in, we invest, and we build up our country to become a Singapore. And in return, we are one that spurs industrialization, and then we industrialize the entire continent. So that's why nationhood is such an important aspect of it. And once we start getting that done, and once we get boots on the ground, then that's where we can see that. Baruti's next comment is, why is the philosophy that there are multi-level merit and benefits in Pan-African languages not realized? Is there some disconnect that in there that is making up, that is, sorry, my bad. Is there some disconnect that is making the ADOS-minded people think otherwise? Please elaborate. I think the problem is that a lot of us have this, a lot of them don't study Africa. A lot of ADOS people, when they talk about Africa, right? It was just like similar to the situation with the slave trade, right? One of the things that a lot of Black Americans will say is well, you know, West Africans, they sold us, and not understanding the contempt that West African countries were not countries at that time, and there were certain tribes that Europeans wanted to go into. How does that apply today in the African Free Trade Agreement? A lot of African Americans think that Africans just want us for our money. That could well be the case, but they think that they're just there to, take our money. They're not doing Pan African in themselves when they're trying to do it. They're trying to build There's a Pan African Parliament. They have the African Union. They have ECOWAS. They were trying to find their own currency. And we act as if, Africans, we're coming to save them, like a Western stereotype, and that they can't think for themselves. No, we can help lead the charge, but Africans are doing it themselves too. They're challenging their notion. So I don't think that we should, that's where I think that disconnect comes from, is people make it too simple and not understanding it's much multi-layered and it's much more complex than what we think it is. So to me, that is why the disconnect is coming from. That's where the disconnect is coming from. Any more questions? I have one more question. One more question that I'm going to ask is, what industry should African Americans focus on now that the AfCFTA is in effect? Um, the industries that we should invest in heavily is construction. We should invest in renewable energy, investing in space, astronomy, because Africa does not have a strong space industry. We need to invest heavily in manufacturing, defense spending. We need to invest major in, mining, transportation, um, artificial intelligence, so computer sciences, narrow intelligence, general intelligence. These are levels of artificial super intelligence. We need to invest in biotechnology, biochemistry. These are all major industries that we can get involved in, especially considering that we have some resources that could make industrialization happen faster, more intra-African trade happen faster. Another thing that would benefit us is, having an outline of a foreign policy and an agenda, creating a 5-year plan so that we understand and we know where we're going, and we can build that leverage and we can sort of see the world in our sphere of influence in the way that we want. The AfCFTA has a massive influence in, increasing, manufacturing in Africa. Africa only has about like 3% of the world's GDP and 2% of the world's manufacturing. That's terrible. We've been deindustrializing since the 1970s, since African countries have gained their independence. We're now the poorest region in the world, with all the other regions pushing ahead. And we really need the AfCFTA, and we really need to start doing intra-African trade so that those GDP per capita can increase, so that those GDP can increase, so that we can find the needs within the African continent, create household African names, create a tax base, and be able to redistribute that wealth. So, and of course, the African diaspora, Haiti planned to join the African Union. I think they did. So we can expand it to include countries like Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos, Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Kitts and Nevis. You have Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Suriname. Um, so we can build Liberia, of course. Like you said, I too build Liberia. Like I said, Liberia should be I posted something in the chat, October, if you didn't know, I put like a shortcut link in. But basically my point was that Liberia needs to serve as the Singapore or the Japan to spur industrialization, because Africa needs its own industrialization. It needs its own Africa needs its own Singapore and Japan if it wants to get ahead. Because that's what really spurred Asian industrialization. So what spurred Asian industrialization is Japan was the first industrialized nation. Then came in what were known as the Asian tigers. The Asian tigers were known as South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, is and who else? Singapore. Those were the Asian tigers. We need our African lions, and we really need those African lions to play more of an influence in their respective regions. To answer Baruti's question, do you see any disbenefits in African Americans becoming citizens of the various African countries and then remaining using this network to connecting with remaining blacks? No, I don't see a disbenefit. I think that African Americans should have multiple citizenships in African countries, because having those African countries creates leverage. One of the things that we don't have is we don't have leverage globally in certain countries. So by making investments in African countries and becoming citizens of African countries, when an election season comes, we can influence African governments and say, you align with the US and they're not giving us, reparations. You're not giving us what we want on the African continent. We'll vote for the person that doesn't do it. And then since a lot of stuff is motivated by politics, it's going to give us an advantage. So no, I think that having African Americans become citizens of various countries, strengthens our diaspora, strengthens the amount of investments, and we need to, and it will create more leverage. And like Ituber said, Liberia should be the home base. Whoops, hold on. Let me get back. All right, yeah. So we definitely need that. Liberia should serve as the home base. Africa as a continent, I did not know that. So thank you very much, Bruce Leroy of the AUDA NAPAD. I did not know that. We need we need somebody to open up the economy. A lot of African countries are closed economies. It's harder to travel to other African countries than it is to travel to Europe. So we definitely need, the Deng Xiaoping, who was able to open up the economy, really liberalize the economy, and grow the economy that ultimately projected China to what they are now. Right now, the African lines are Ethiopia, Nigeria, Rwanda. I don't think about Nigeria. Nigeria's economy has been contracting. It's been contracting for quite some time. They just now built they just got their GDP up, but Nigeria's economy has been in recession constantly. We can build Rwanda into a Singapore. We can build it. Um we can help other African countries. I'm not saying we can't help. I just focus on Liberia because that you need to serve as a home base. You have to have somewhere where the concentration of that might is. So we can build Liberia while at the same time investing and working with countries such as Rwanda with Paul Kagame. And Rwanda is not the only country that's rising. People sleep on the fact that Gabon is the one of the richest countries in Africa, but we sleep on Gabon like it don't exist. We sleep on the Republic of Congo, one of the richest countries in Africa, Congo Brazzaville. We sleep on that country. So there are a lot of African lines that we're sleeping on, but we just tend to focus on Rwanda because that's the most marketable and the most well known. But yeah, it is predicting itself to become a line of Africa and the Singapore of Africa is what it wants to be. Um, for Bruce Leroy's question, how can we leverage when China is funding every major infrastructure project like the Inga Dam? For that, I think you can have leverage by number one having boots on the ground, but for that, I think you would have to negotiate with China. We would have to work with China too and make sure like our interests align with their interests because I think China would be. You got to understand global politics. So to build leverage, you first need to have that homeland, and then you have to offer something that China isn't offering. That's the thing. You have to offer something in a way that you have to be offering them something that Africans will feel like is an alternative to what China or the United States is doing. So if they don't want to pick either side, that's when we can come in and say, "Hey, you can pick us," and we would not have a problem. The next question is, I forgot about Ghana. They're doing many things right. Ghana is having its own issues as well. A lot of African countries are having their own issues. No African country is holier than now. I think the only major countries that were showing growth were Rwanda. South Africa is having its own problem. I mean, they're doing things right. Ghana is doing their things right in way. They are building another international airport to accommodate more investment in the eastern part of Ghana. That is true. They are positioning themselves in a way that Liberia should be doing, leveraging the diaspora to fuel their development. We'll see the differences with Ghana is Ghana has a larger population. And that's one of the things that people don't factor in is Liberia only has about 5 million people. Ghana has somewhere like about 30 million people. And they were, what else? And when we talk about investing in the diaspora, a lot of those African Americans have been there for years. It's not like it's a recent phenomenon. Like it took 20 years for Ghana to do the year of return when they've had the right of vote since 2000, and they really could have spurred that 20 years ongoing. But you know, that's a fact to consider when people want to understand why Liberia has not been doing it, and also because you got to factor in the Civil War that happened because the Civil War lasted from 1989 to 2003, and it wasn't until 2005 that the first president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, was elected. That was democratically, and then she had to get the country up, and that's when Bob Johnson started doing with it in 2008, and then when Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is not out of her office in 2017, of course you had the Ebola crisis. So there was a lot of stuff that was happening in Liberia that really sort of hindered that from happening. But yeah. Any more questions? I want to listen to the questions. We've gotten done with the 5 questions. If there's any more questions you would like to ask, comments, if you would like to come on and give your opinion, um, let me know. Because this is a huge opportunity that we can invest in. So if there's any questions, if you would like to be a guest, let me know. You know, I'm all up for it. For me personally, I think this is a good thing. I'm excited for it. It's about time. It's time for so many opportunities. Um, I'm just really tired of seeing Africa left behind. I want to see Africa winning. I don't like to see the fact that we are basically the bottom of the barrel in every which category. I think we can do a lot more better on that situation. So, this is a huge opportunity for us. Any questions? Because I'm waiting. And speaking of Ghana, they had their election, and then that situation happened with Mahama and Akufo-Addo. So see, what else is it there that I need to bring up that I forgot? Oh yeah, we need to increase the AfCFTA can also it's gonna affect our relationships with the EU, China, and Russia, and we need to that could be speculation, but you have to understand Bob Johnson is also has other ventures. So his selling of it to a Ghanaian businessman could have been factored by the fact that he has other businesses. So, you know, we don't know for sure exactly, but that could be a speculation on his okay, yeah, so there's a lot of that speculation with Robert Johnson. Sub-Sahara tweeted, "How are African countries' bureaucracy?" Okay, I've been to South Africa, and I'll tell you that it's slow. It's very slow. I'm just being real with you. I was at a university, and it takes a lot of time. Like I said before, you have to factor in that a lot of African countries don't have the necessary infrastructure. And since, a lot of African countries don't have the necessary infrastructure, or the governmental institutions are fairly young, or they're not that strong, um, it can take some time. So bureaucracy takes a lot of time. Even in South Africa, it takes time. Corruption is rampant. So it plays a huge factor. So you have to be patient. Things are fairly chill. I mean, you can change things, but just be aware of that. I think that, like, there's a lot of stuff that happened. Like, when it comes to him, I think, well, there's a lot of stuff going on with Bob Johnson. But I used to like Bob Johnson, but some things about Bob Johnson rubs me in the wrong way. But especially, some of the stuff he says on CNBC. So I guess maybe because Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is out of office and George Weah is in office. Um, he sold it back in 2017, and it was and that was the same time that George Weah was in there. So, yeah, they did a whole article on that. And they even did an investigation on that. So, you know, things change, circumstances change. I understand why, it may not have well world. He is a venture capitalist, and sometimes it may require, selling of the property. We see this before. We saw with Oprah sell her 50% to the Discovery Channel. So, I mean, it really is. It really is complicated. Any more questions that the group chat may have? I'm all up for it. But I think that also, I feel like if more African Americans would have came with Bob Johnson instead of you know, just it just been him, I think he probably would have invested more. But the fact that I think a lot of African Americans didn't show up with Bob Johnson and instead was busy, celebrating Barack Obama, who was imperialist, I think that also played a factor. I wish that it was like the Rwanda situation, where like it was like a group of them, and they were planning to do business about that. But it's either here or there. I still think Liberia rise. I think it just needs to be more sustained and not be more towards like one individual because Bob Johnson he spent $30 million on him. I feel like if he would have had more African Americans, spend a good decent 50 to 100 million in investment, then that would be which country do you offer to go? I'm biased towards Liberia, so I always make Liberia my point. Other countries to consider: South Africa. If you are willing to speak French, I would say the Republic of Congo. If that's not a country you want to go to, then Sierra Leone, go to Ghana. Um, Yeah, so if you also want English speaking countries, I'm not keen on East Africa. I just East Africa is not my vibe. But I would include Tanzania. Well, yeah, Tanzania, Kenya. Not a fan of Uganda. I don't like I'm not a fan of Uganda. Um, and then of course, Namibia and Botswana. Baruti, if you were to become a Liberian citizen, would you consider yourself Liberian or African American Liberia? I would just be a Liberian of African American descent. African American is an ethnicity; it's not a nationality. So we're not a nation yet. So I'd just be a Liberian of African American descent, or I'd be what they would call in America a Liberian, which is just African American and Liberian English, or I'd be a Congo person. So that's what I would be if I became a Liberian citizen. I'd just be a Liberian citizen of African American. Um, What do you think about Felix Tshisekedi? Um, I think he's better than Joseph Kabila because I think Joseph Kabila just dropped the country into the ground. He is on the African Union chair. Although I was more prefer a Fayulu, but Felix Tshisekedi to me is okay. I mean, he does work. He did work for a gas company, so if that is something that you consider business experience in the business world, then Teshiketi fits that description. Um, so that's how I feel about him. The Democratic Republic of Congo, I mean, it's pretty stable in terms of the east on the western side. There's still the war in the eastern front where where the nearby the Rwandan border. So that is going on there. But overall, I have no problem with Teshiketi, and I have no problem with the Democratic Republic of Congo, especially on the where Brazzaville and Kinshasa are. Is Nairobi, Kenya a good place to live? I don't live in Nairobi, Kenya, but based on what I've seen, it's a good place to live. It is one of the most developed parts of East Africa. I would say Nairobi, Kenya is the most developed city in East Africa. That's what I would say. Based on the Human Development Index. So Kenya, yeah, Nairobi's a good place to live. I mean, I've considered going to Kenya before. I have not been to Kenya, but I wouldn't mind going to Nairobi. Nairobi's it's a pretty good place. I'm not gonna say that it's a terrible place. It's not. So like I said, if you were considering moving to East Africa, Kenya, and then maybe Tanzania. Although I would prefer Kenya over anywhere else. How practical is nationhood when we have no control over in the Pan African passport? You would still be able to control stuff. It's just your rules would have to just be in compliance with the AfCFTA and being complied with the African Union and ECOWAS. It's the same. You have obligations, okay. And one of the things that a nation that we have to understand is you have international agreements. And so you can't just do your own thing. It was the same reason why when Kenya made that trade deal with the United States, a lot of East African countries were mad. And they were mad was because, well, if you do that, if you um do your own trade rules and then you go work with the United States and you're not in compliance with the East African Commission, it destroys everything. So there will be no point in the East African Commission. You're basically disrambling it because now those East African countries that want to be able to compete can't compete because you're making your own rules. So yes, you can privately, within your own countries, make economic rules. It's not a complete dictatorship. It's not one country, but at the same time, you have to be in compliance with the AfCFTA, ECOWAS, and all these other fronts. Any African will be able to come into our country. Um, yes, but you also have screenings. It's not just like they just walk up in a place and there's no background checks and there's no nothing. They'll be able to travel in easier. They won't have to go through all these barriers like getting a visa and spending hundreds of dollars. They would just be able to get a passport and move forward. But what that would just be able to do is we would just basically tell people to strengthen the requirements for getting a passport. We would need to know their history and stuff, and then once we know that they are fully deserving and qualified for a passport, then we can go from there. So and that's good because it's going to increase tourism, and it's going to create the strength of our passports. So it's definitely a benefit the fact that Africans will be able to come into our country. It definitely will be a benefit. That's how the U.S. economy maintains itself, is it brings in lots of immigrants. I mean, of course they have the green cards and stuff like that, but that's what you need. You need skilled laborers. You need resources. So why not let them come to our country? And I'm a huge immigrant fan. Like I'm in favor. I mean, South Africa. You said why the Republic of Congo? The Republic of Congo is number one. It's one of the richest countries in Africa. It's richer than Ghana. It's richer than Nigeria. Brazzaville. If you've been to Congo, Brazzaville, it's one of the most developed regions in all of like Africa. Like in terms of human development index, it's like almost equivalent to like Johannesburg in terms of like we sleep on the Republic of Congo. We really do be sleeping. We conflate the Republic of Congo with the Democratic Republic of Congo. And the Republic of Congo and the Democratic Republic of Congo are two different countries. Democratic Republic of Congo has been often unstable and been dealing with rebels for it's been the bloodiest conflict since World War II. The Republic of Congo has yet to see any sort of major conflict or any, major thing that have disrupted the economy. So we sleep on the Republic of Congo a lot. Brazzaville, Point Niere. You said we will not be able to dictate what's in our country. I disagree. You can make what people don't understand is that it means access. It makes it easier to sell goods. It doesn't mean that we subsidize things. It doesn't mean we're going to pour investment into their private companies and their firms. It just means that they'll be able to easily set up shop and open up businesses. It doesn't mean that we're going to give them investments. We're going to give them government subsidies. Give them these resources, nationalize stuff. We're still going to be able to control what is sold in our borders. It's just we can't be putting in tariffs or other stuff to try to. We basically can't be putting in barriers, but we don't have to like give them government subsidies, investments, or fund into them. East Africa, I mean, no, I mean East Africa just rubs me the wrong way. Like it's a personal thing for me. Maybe with the exception of Rwanda, I really don't like fool with East Africa like that. Um, I'm more of West Central Africa. So yeah, so that's why for me, East Africa is just not my vibe. There's just a lot of things that East Africa, you know, get brings me that just is not what I am. I'm more East Central and in Southern Africa. Um, Bruce Lee said that's not how trade treaty works. No, okay. So, like I said before, what it simply means is that you're going to have to apply by the rules. But it doesn't mean, as long as it's not in violation, they're still going to be able to control domestic policies. It's not like, it's like the European Union. Even though the European Union, they have common economic policies, they still are individual countries, and they still have, like, the individual currencies. They still are able to fund investment into companies, give subsidies, give loans to their country's company. It just means you just fit the requirements of the trade agreement. We don't know how strict it is, we don't know how loose it is. All we know is that it's going to create a single market. African trade barriers are going to be removed. So there's not going to be a lot of tariffs to, basically, make it hard to sell goods. But you're still going to have economic policies. You're still going to be able to craft economic policies. It's not just like a dictatorship where, oh, the AfCFTA is created and now we can't do anything. We're helpless. That's just not the case. Okay, I have not been mentioned Zambia because Zambia, one, is a landlocked country. It's a landlocked country. If you include landlocked, then it's not a problem. Also, I don't like their governor. I don't like their leader. I think his name is Edward Lungu, who is the president. Yeah, Edward Lungu, the president of Zambia, who has been taking a wide amount of Chinese loans. I don't mind you doing Chinese loans, but he's doing a lot of government mismanagement. Corruption is rampant in Zambia, and just so that's why Zambia, I have not considered, it as like a place to build link. I mean, we can build linkages in Zambia. I'm not opposed to it, but in terms of living in Zambia, um, yeah. But Zambia is still a good place. I'm not gonna say that. Lusaka is a bad place because I mean, Zambia's got copper, they got resources. So I'm not gonna say Zambia's not a place to build languages. It's not my number one goal. That's it. But Zambia, yeah, I mean, you can invest in Zambia if you want to. I'm not opposed to Zambia. Hmm. Make sure to like and share this video so we can get this information out there. Because I don't think a lot of African Americans understand what the AfCFTA is, and how it can benefit our population. So please share this video. But yeah, I mean, nationhood would be perfect with this because it strengthens intra-African trade, and we wouldn't have to worry about being dependent on outside continental powers because a lot of our goods will be imported and exported to African countries. So that's where the benefit. Like I said, nationhood will still be there. You still have politics. You'll still have economic policies. You just have to be in accordance with the agreement. That's all that matters. As long as that matters, and as long as you're with that, you can craft policies. Do subsidies, do whatever you want. So it's not like it's a handicap. Any last questions? Because we're approaching on the hour mark, and I don't want to keep you guys here too long and just ramble. I would, if you don't have any more questions, I can end the live stream. So if there's any last questions that you would like to ask, let me know. Any other comments, let me know. Also, I'm gonna be doing these from now on. There's a lot of things going on, so I'm gonna be doing this from here on out. To keep you guys updated on what's going on. I also do this personally on my own. So if you would like that, make sure you subscribe to mine so that you can also get more news and historical facts. If there's any last questions, let me know. If not, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I love having this chat with you guys. Okay, so there is another question. What are the barriers, slowdowns, and reluctance, if any, about extending African passport to interested diasporans? I think it is because you have to have, excuse me, you need to have really a group identity, and you really need to have there has to be something that you can coalesce around. Because when we mean by the diaspora, how do we know that you're part of the? Well, we know you'd be outside of Africa, so we know you'd be living outside of the country. But in terms of like African Americans, um, but that's why I think it is. But also, we don't have that major investment. I think that is the biggest thing. Let me clarify. I think that is the biggest thing, Baruti. We don't have a strong presence on the African continent. So, for example, African Americans, we don't send remittances there. We don't send investment money to African businesses. So, for a lot of African countries, they're really just focusing on their countries and their immediate diaspora. They're not really focusing on the Caribbean, the Bahamas, and stuff like that. And I feel like once we become more involved and we have a blueprint there, then I think they're going to be willing to expend the passport more. But I think a lot more of us have to have our presence there, and we have to coalesce around something so that it makes it easily identifiable for us to, for the African Union to extend those passports to us. And there has to be a mechanism to be able to hand out those passports. It's just you would have to have either fill out a form, you would have to go through a process or something to make that happen. Would it be easy? I assume you say, would it be easy to hijack an existing African country? I mean, there was a country that was created for African Americans called Liberia. So, that's why my avatar is that. Like, just it makes no sense for me to, try to force another African country to allow some land when I could just try to revitalize that connection that has been tried to been revitalizing for centuries. Liberia tried to give acres of land to us. So in terms of highlighting an existing country, Liberia is just the way to go. That's just the reality. The flag speaks for itself. The flag was designed by African American women. All of our major historic figures been there. So it would just be easier just to, go to Liberia than any other country. Especially considering the fact it doesn't cause the trauma that some African Americans may have concern with going into West Africa. So, and the fact that East Africa we don't really have much of a connection to, because we have a connection with them with Pan Africanism and African liberation, but in terms of genetically, we're not East Africa unless you're talking about Mozambique and Madagascar, which are technically Southeastern Africa. So Liberia will be the main focus for me, and I'm always going to be advocating for that, and I'm always going to be making connections with that country, and I'm always proud of it every day. All righty, well, if that is the case, like I said, I'm going to keep you guys posted about this. I'm going to try to do this more now and then. Um, so I think it is, we need a name that is specifically for us. So an example would be, Jamaicans call themselves Jamaicans, but Haitians call themselves Haitians, but like we don't call ourselves like the Creole people or well, we do have Louisiana Creoles, but like Gullah. Like Gullah's easy. Okay, a black person from African American from South Carolina, Gullah. That's easy. It's easy to identify. It's a unique word. It's a unique name. Its origins come from Africa, and it's mixture of African with English. It's really easy for me to identify. So I can easily identify Gullah and say, oh, well, I'm Gullah. I don't have to put the African American because it's specified. So I feel like, if Black Americans adopted Gullah, it might have been better. Or America Liberians. I think having a name that is specific and unique only to us is what matters. So I think that's why our group identity is a problem, because we don't have a unique name that is so for us that when people hear the name, they instantly know what it means. For African American, African American can mean somebody from Nigeria. American descendants of slaves, it can be somebody from Trinidad. Because there was a group called Americans who were descendant of American slaves, and they went to Trinidad. So, once you have that name that is instantly associated with people, um, I think it'll be easier. And that's why I advocate for Liberia, because it's easier to rally around it. If African Americans would say we're Liberians, it's easier to rally the flag around it because you have something to rally around. You have a target and it makes it easier. So that's why for me, Baruti, I think it's better if, we call ourselves by indigenous name, but also have that connection with Liberia and identify ourselves as Liberian. All right, y'all. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I don't want to keep you guys too long. It's past an hour, and I want to keep this sweet and brief so that you can go back and rewind it, and you don't have to like spend so much of your time, having to listen to this me going on and on and on about it. So thank you guys for tuning in. Subscribe to please sign up to the website. Please sign up to the BIO register. Please, we need you to do that. Land Infrastructure Nationhood. So like I said before, you can go back and look at this, see the opportunities that the AfCFTA has. Make sure that you subscribe to the website. I'm going to keep saying that again because we really need those people to sign up to the website, because we are not going to know who is who if you know you don't sign up to the website. It's 5 minutes. It's less than 5 minutes. It's no problem. You can do it. Answer Buruti's last question. Yeah, like Underrated Mindset, we got the BAIO get together tonight. And I'm going to answer these last two questions, and then I'm going to end it here. Should African Americans who can move to Africa? Yes, they should. They should move to Liberia. I'm going to keep advocating on that. That's the country that I'm focused on. Bob Johnson brought it up. Marcus Garvey, Martin Delaney. Should African Americans who can move to Africa? Yes, they should. And you're right, Baruti, the topic needs to be explored. We need to have our own identity and make something that is unique. But make sure that you sign up to the website. I'm going to see if I can put the blafricstan.org website on. I put it in the chat. Make sure that you sign up to that website. Like Hold Up said, please do it. It's not hard. It's only 5 minutes. We have it, our get together starting 7 p.m. tonight. I'm going to be there. Make sure you're there to be there. So yeah, this is Jabari, and you guys have a great rest of the day. And yeah, fam, peace.